She met him on a rain-soaked evening when the sky looked as if it was carrying the weight of 1,000 heartbreaks. Emma had always believed that the universe sent people into her life with a purpose, some to heal, some to teach, and some to destroy. She just didn't know which category Adrian belonged to when he stepped toward her, holding the umbrella she didn't bother to bring. His smile was soft, his eyes tired, and something in his posture suggested a man who had learned how to live with pain the way others learn to breathe. Emma wasn't looking for love. She was running from it, building walls higher than anyone could climb. Adrian wasn't trying to climb anything. He merely stood at a distance, offering warmth in his quiet presence. Their first conversation lasted only a few minutes, but those minutes stretched into something that felt strangely significant, like the beginning of a storm disguised as calm. Adrian laughed gently at her sarcastic remarks. She rolled her eyes when he tried to guess her favorite novels. Everything between them felt accidental, unplanned, yet unavoidable. Like the two of them had been pushed together by invisible hands neither understood. They met again a week later. And again after that, until their encounters stopped being coincidences and became rituals. Coffee on Tuesdays. Long walks on Fridays. Silent moments sprinkled between conversations about dreams that felt too fragile to say out loud. Emma slowly allowed herself to unravel, thread by thread, in the safety he offered. Adrian listened to every word she spoke as if her thoughts were rare poetry. He never interrupted, never rushed her feelings, and never pretended to know her better than she knew herself. She didn't realize when caring turned into longing, or when longing turned into love. It happened the way flowers bloom, quietly, invisibly, all at once. Adrian, however, carried something heavy inside him, something wrapped in shadows. Emma sensed it long before he admitted anything. His eyes would darken when she spoke about the future. His hands would shake when she touched him unexpectedly. Nights were the worst. He would disappear for hours, ignoring messages, returning with apologies carved into his voice. Emma pretended not to worry, but her mind built catastrophes she didn't know how to silence. She loved him too fiercely to be rational, too deeply to walk away. One night, after a long silence, Adrian finally confessed the truth. He told her about the trauma that haunted him, the failures he couldn't forget, the people he had loved and lost. He carried guilt like a second skin, one he couldn't shed. Emma listened without judgment, her heart breaking with every word he spoke. She promised she wouldn't leave. She promised she would stay, no matter how broken he felt. But even promises had limits, and some hearts were too cracked to hold love without bleeding. Their relationship became a fragile balance between affection and fear. Adrian feared hurting her. Emma feared losing him. Their love was passionate, intoxicating, but also destructive. They fought often, over small things, over memories, over the ghosts that lived between them. Adrian would shut down, retreating into silence, while Emma tried desperately to pull him back into the world. She didn't understand that some people don't want to be saved. She believed love could cure everything, even wounds carved by years of suffering. The more she tried to fix him, the more he broke. The more he pulled away, the tighter she held on. Their arguments turned into cold nights, unanswered messages, and long stretches of loneliness. Emma cried more often than she laughed, yet she still loved him with a devotion that frightened even herself. Love, she realized, was not always gentle. Sometimes it was a knife disguised as a kiss, despite the chaos. They shared moments that felt like stolen miracles, midnight conversations about childhood memories, warm embraces after hours of silence, lingering kisses that tasted like promises they couldn't keep. Emma cherished every second, terrified each one would be the last. Adrian cherished them too, but he feared that one day she would see the darkness inside him and decide he wasn't worth the trouble. What he didn't know was that she had already seen it and loved him anyway. But love alone wasn't enough. Not when his past clawed its way into their present. Adrian's panic attacks grew more intense. He pushed Emma away when he needed her most. She begged him to talk, to trust her, to let her carry some of the weight. But he couldn't. Or maybe he wouldn't. He apologized endlessly, but apologies without change became daggers in her heart. Emma started losing herself, her routines, her joy, her identity. Loving him became both her greatest comfort and her deepest wound. The turning point came on a winter evening when snow fell quietly, covering the streets like a fragile blanket. Emma waited for him at the cafe where they always met. Hours passed. She messaged him, called him. No answer. When he finally arrived, his face was pale, his eyes distant, his voice trembling. He told her he needed time. He told her he didn't want to hurt her anymore. He told her he was leaving, not forever, but long enough to figure himself out. Emma felt something inside her collapse. She tried to smile, tried to be supportive, but her chest felt like an empty corridor echoing with lost. He kissed her forehead before leaving, and Emma knew that kiss carried a finality he wasn't able to admit. She stood there for minutes, then hours, whispering his name into the winter air, hoping the wind would carry her pain somewhere far away. But pain never leaves easily. It settles in the bones, in the memory, in the places where love once lived. Weeks passed with no message. No call. No sign of him. Emma became a ghost in her own life, moving through days without purpose. She checked her phone obsessively, hoping for a single word from him, something to prove she hadn't imagined the love they shared. But silence can be louder than screams. Silence can kill hope more effectively than heartbreak. Adrian eventually returned, not physically, but with a message so brief it felt like a wound rather than comfort. He said he wasn't ready. He said he needed more time. He said she deserved better. Emma cried until she could barely breathe. She didn't want someone better. She wanted him, flawed, wounded, imperfect. She wanted the version of him who held her hand in the rain, who whispered dreams into her hair, who kissed her as if life made sense only when their lips met. But love was never about wanting alone. Sometimes it was about letting go, even when your heart refused to obey. Emma tried to move on, but every reminder, his favorite songs, the places they visited, the scent of winter air, brought him back. She felt like she was loving a ghost, loving someone who no longer belonged to her world. Months later, Adrian reappeared. He showed up at her door with eyes full of regret and exhaustion. Emma froze. Part of her longed to jump into his arms. Another part remembered every sleepless night, every unanswered message, every piece of herself she had sacrificed. He apologized again, but this time his voice cracked. He told her he missed her. He told her he still loved her. He told her he was ready to try, and she believed him. Love makes believers out of the hopeless. She let him in, physically and emotionally. They spent hours talking, really talking, about their fears, their mistakes, their hopes. It felt like a rebirth, a second chance wrapped in fragile optimism. Emma didn't know whether to feel joy or fear. Adrian didn't know whether to cling to her or run again. But they tried. For a while, they really tried. But second chances are dangerous. They carry the weight of previous heartbreaks, the echoes of old wounds. Adrian still struggled with his darkness. Emma still struggled to trust. Their arguments returned, sharper this time, fueled by the fear of repeating the past. Adrian blamed himself for everything. Emma blamed herself too, even though she shouldn't have. They loved each other, but they didn't know how to exist without tearing themselves apart. The final collapse came quietly, not with shouting, but with resignation. One evening, after a long argument, they sat on the floor of Emma's apartment, surrounded by the emptiness of everything they couldn't fix. Adrian took her hand and whispered that he loved her more than anything. But love wasn't enough to keep him whole. Emma held his face in her palms and whispered back that she would always care for him. But she couldn't keep losing pieces of herself to his pain. They cried together, holding each other like two souls trying to stay afloat in a storm they both created. When Adrian finally stood up to leave, he looked at her the way someone looks at the love of their life and the biggest mistake they ever made, at the same time. Emma watched him walk away, knowing that this time he wouldn't return. The silence he left behind was colder than winter. Emma healed slowly, painfully. She learned to breathe again, learned to find herself again. Adrian wrote her letters he never sent, words filled with longing and regret. He hoped she was happy. He hoped she was safe. He hoped she forgot him. She never truly did. Some loves stay forever, even when the people leave. Years later, they saw each other again on a street corner. Their eyes met, softly, silently. They smiled, not out of hope, not out of sadness, but out of gratitude for the love that broke them and the pain that shaped them. They didn't speak. They didn't need to. Some stories end without closure. Some souls meet only to drift apart. But some loves remain eternal, unfinished, unforgettable, tragic, beautiful, and theirs was one of them.